account. It's great.
I need to, yes. I'll put my head of IT hat for a second.
Perfect,
and,
perfect.
Consider. Here we go. So good morning. Oh yeah, so I guess this meeting is sponsored by Microsoft Teams, since we got, unlike like podcasts, we get a little interstitial at the beginning. But this, I'm sorry, Will. I think most of it was not recorded.
That's okay. That's
so
all right.
I guess
Next time.
It doesn't work. So this meeting is not sponsored. So here we are. So this is our February instance of the monthly OpenLineage meeting. As a reminder, this meeting is recorded. We'll be taking notes, and the recorded will be posted on the official OpenLineage wiki on the LFA Data Foundation page. We start by doing quick roll call. So I'll go over the room and ask everyone to just quickly introduce yourself and say hi. And I'll go in order on my screen. And if there's something you care about, you wish would be discussed or explained, I'll also take that as an opportunity to write down extra agenda items. So those are the TSC members, kind of like required quorum for voting if we have anything to vote on. But otherwise, everybody is welcome to this meeting. So on my screen, top left, I have Michael Robinson.
Good morning, everyone. I'm a developer relations engineer with Datakin, and I'm here primarily to facilitate things. I'll be taking notes this morning, working on my first PR for the project, which I'm excited about. Thanks.
Nice. Next on my screen is myself. I'm Julien. I'm the CTO of Datakin, the lead for OpenLineage, and like co-founder of the Marcus project and other things before that. Next on my screen is Ross.
Hi, I'm Ross. I'm a VP Marketing at Datakin, and I'm here to support OpenLineage with all things words and pictures.
Maciej.
Hello, I'm Maciej. I'm software engineer at Getting Data and OpenLineage committer.
Next on my screen, I have Peter Scharling.
Yep, I'm Peter. I'm from a small startup, EI Group. We are my partners here too, and we are developing metadata repositories tailored towards engineers. We're very, very interested in what you are developing and see if this will work together with us, because we don't focus that much on the operational metadata yet.
Nice, welcome.
Thanks a lot.
Next, Peter. Oh, sorry, Peter Hicks.
Hi, I'm also Peter. I'm a software engineer at Datakin, and I'm a Marquez contributor.
Venkatesh.
Hi, my name is Venkat. I'm not a TSC voting member, participant here. I've been on and off, always interested in data lineage and what you guys do.
Nice. John Thomas.
Sorry, I'm muted. I'm John. I'm a support engineer here at Datakin. I've been providing kind of proactive reactive support for both the Datakin product and also kind of helping out in the communities around OpenLineage and Marquez.
Kim Dalin.
Hi, Dalin here. I am a data engineer from Northwestern Mutual under Kevin's group. And today I'm joining to kind of join the discussions about the OpenLineage and Dagster integration. And if time allows, I can maybe give a short demo to kind of get some feedback.
Oh, nice. That'd be awesome. Yes, we'll definitely make sure to have time for that.
Yeah, it's still going through our internal review process, but I think I can share the initial design. So.
Excellent. Kevin Mellott.
Yeah, hello.
Kevin Millett. So I work with Dalin, like you said, in Northwestern Mutual. I'm much more involved in the Marquez project, but excited to see what's going on here with integrations and everything else.
Will Johnson.
Hey everybody, my name is Will. I am a cloud solution architect at Microsoft. Been contributing a couple PRs to the OpenLineage project and super excited to see what's coming up next. Would love to know more about when the next release is coming out and you know how we can help. That's it. That's me.
Nice. Kelsey Brennan.
Yep. Hello everyone. I'm Kelsey Brennan. I work with Peter Sharling, who spoke earlier. We have a little company that may have some interesting things that we want to learn more about what you're doing, see how it all fits together. So I'm just going to sit back and listen and take it in and see where it goes. So thanks.
Nice, welcome.
Thanks.
Aaron.
Hi. Well, I think you know me from before, a colleague of Kevin and Dalin's, and we met a while ago. I'm here to actually see Dalin's presentation on Dagster and OpenLineage. I'm actually no longer their direct colleague. I now work over as a senior director for the Center of Excellence at Privacera. So glad to see what's going on.
Nice. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, glad to see you again. Hopefully we can talk some more.
Yes, that for sure. Minkyu.
Hello, I'm Minkyu. I'm a software engineer at Datakin, and I am a contributor to OpenLineage and Marquez.
Michael Collado.
Hey, I'm Michael. I'm a staff software engineer at Datakin. Work on both OpenLineage and Marquez. Primarily, I've been focusing on the Spark integration with OpenLineage, but I also poke my fingers into the Airflow stuff and some of the other ones every once in a while.
Nice. And I think I went over everyone. Sorry, like Zoom changes the order, puts all the videos up. So if you turn off your video, you get at the end of the queue, and you turn it on, you get at the beginning. So I think that's all. Welcome, everyone. And the next slide is just a quick reminder for how we communicate on the project. The main mean of communication is through Slack. So you can join the OpenLineage Slack with this link. There's also a mailing list, which has been used mainly for announcements, but you're welcome to use it if you're more of an email person. There's a Confluence page where we keep track of the notes of this meeting, and there's a Twitter account you can follow it that talks about new releases and things like that as well. On the agenda today, so I think a lot of those items are a bit on the early side. So I'm actually interested in if people want to expand on the introduction I'm going to give. And let me know if there's anything else. We have an open discussion item. We can also add other items that you think needs discussion or you would want to bring the focus on. So is there anything special? Okay, not today. And feel free to chime in later in the meeting if something comes up. So I'll start with mentioning the OpenLineage 0.5.1. And we talked a bit about the last at the last meeting of the next upcoming release because it was released right after the previous meeting. So moving your faces a bit on my screen so that I can see my slides. So we added the support for the dbt Spark adapter in dbt integration. So dbt Spark is an extension you can install to work with dbt and Spark SQL, and now we'll collect lineage through that as well. The proxy backend is a mean to send forward OpenLineage events to a Kafka queue for systems who prefer consuming those events from a Kafka queue rather than receiving them through HTTP, as is the default in OpenLineage. And in particular, this is used by the Egeria project that Mandy Chessel leads. So this is interesting for people who are interested in Kafka. And it adds also the Spark extensibility API to add more custom facets, from which is something that Will Johnson and team at Microsoft were really interested to add, like extra support for the Microsoft specific data sources. And there's also a few bug fixes that were added in that release. And the reason is 051. It's because, sorry, we had a bug in the release script, and the 050 artifact was not published correctly in the Python repository. And so we had, and you can't republish the same artifact. So we had to create a new release and delete the old one. So there's no 050 officially. So on the next item, I wanted to highlight, so last time Maciej talked about his work on adding the task instance listener in Airflow, which is a more seamless way to integrate OpenLineage with Airflow. And I just wanted to highlight that this now has been merged into Airflow, and it's going to be part of the 2.3 release. And so moving forward, it's going to be the official way that OpenLineage integrates with Airflow. And you can check this. I'll post the slide afterwards. So you have links. You can check on the new plugin mechanism that Maciej added to Airflow. And thank you a lot to the Airflow community for providing feedback and reviews on this. And for those who are familiar with the OpenLineage integration in Airflow, originally you had to, in your DAG definition, you had to change your import from the Airflow DAG to the OpenLineage DAG class. And now that's not the case anymore. It's just a plugin, it's transparent. I think that's what everyone wants to see when you're directly integrated in Airflow through a plugin mechanism, rather than having to extend the DAG class. And another interesting aspect is this also means that the OpenLineage integration now runs on the worker side in Airflow, which means it will have access to more metadata directly in the task instance in the worker. And that's it. So we had a presentation last month about this. So I just wanted to mention that this is coming to fruition. And so the implementation will be in the next release of OpenLineage, I believe. There's a PR in progress you can find here. And this PR has been merged and will be in the upcoming 2.3 release of Airflow. So if there's no question on this, I'll move to the next step.
I can just confirm that what you said is true. Yes, that's
nice. Oh, and yeah, of course, Maciej is here. So this is all Maciej's work, and thank you for this. So the next item. So I just wanted to highlight that we started the work on Flink integration, and something that in particular Ziodin is working on, but also, you know, it's kind of a group effort. And at the initial contribution is an integration test set up to make it easy to test various Flink jobs. There's a ticket for discussion if people have opinions, want to ask questions, want to chime in. And in particular, there'll be more details in the future. For now, this is really the initial step. And I just wanted to point this out. In particular, that means that we have to be more crisp about the modeling of stream processing jobs in the OpenLineage spec. So for this item, I was mostly just mentioning it. This is very early in that step, so it's a bit early to talk about the details, but like feel free to join the discussion. And the next item, so that's where, thank you, Dalin, for offering to talk about this more. I realize this is also a bit early. to present this, but I think this is great. So Dalin initiated those discussion on adding a Dagster integration and creating a channel to help with the communication. So you can join the OpenLineage Slack and check in its channel for discussion. And there's also a bit of discussion on the GitHub on this aspect that Dalin posted. And you can see here, Sandy Ariza is someone from the Dagster community who has been providing feedback on this, which is nice. So Dalin, did you want to do a demo or kind of give some more details about what you've been doing?
Yeah, certainly. Would that be okay?
Let me stop sharing.
And I will share my screen. Yeah, as we just saw, we have an open issue right now for the OpenLineage Dagster. So just to give more context, you know, I'm part of the core data platform team, and we're utilizing OpenLineage to standardize metadata handling and Dagster as our backend engine for the orchestration layer. And so naturally, we were looking for the integration between the two. So, you know, we took a stab at kind of getting the initial integration work done here. And originally, based on a limited knowledge of Dagster, or based on our research, we proposed creating a custom executor, but then got some great feedback from a lot of different folks here, and Sandy basically suggested taking a sensor approach. So in case for those who may not be familiar with Dagster sensor, it's a way to instigate runs based on some external state change. Typically, it's meant to kind of target a specific pipeline as a result of some evaluation. But this would be a sensor without any target jobs. So the evaluation function that runs on a configured interval, it would just process a batch of events from Dagster and convert that to the OpenLineage. So this is kind of a quick preview of what's coming after kind of internal reviews done. So basically, this is introducing a OpenLineage sensor that can be added to your Dagster repository definition, and that tails a Dagster event logs that's stored in the Dagster's backend event log storage for tracking the metadata. And basically on each sensor evaluation, the evaluation function processes a batch of event logs and converts that Dagster events to an OpenLineage events and emits them to the backend. So kind of just a quick example of how that would be set up. So this is typical repository definition for Dagster, and it returns a list of definitions that may be job definition, sensor definition, schedule definition, and so on. So in addition to any other definitions, we would just enable this or add this OpenLineage sensor. And one note was that so we only want to have a single sensor enabled per Dagster instance or the entire deployment, as that sensor checks the entire event log for the running instance. So running multiple sensors, and I can show this a little more, but there are two jobs that are being created in OpenLineage. So there's the top level Dagster job, and then the job contains individual ops. So the ops would be kind of a child jobs, and those natively Dagster don't have a run ID assigned to it. So we kind of dynamically generate that during the sensor run. And so rerunning it would generate a duplicate job runs for those. So, and then there's a couple configurations that can be customized. So minimal interval seconds for the sensor run, and then record filter limit. This would be how many records, Dagster event records, to pull and process on each evaluation. And so just to give a quick demo, so I have a local Marquez running, and then a Dagit with some repositories. So I'm going to actually intentionally just turn off and shut down Marquez. And so here I have 3 repositories as an example. This would be, I have one like an admin, and I think OpenLineage sensor would kind of belong in that main admin level repository. And then I have a repo B and B here. So I'm just going to start running some jobs. So this is a hello job that is consisted of a graph. It's kind of a mid-level abstraction, and that consists of a single op. So I'm just going to run this and just run a couple more other pipelines or jobs. And then, so these 2 were in repo A, and then these 2 are in a couple repo B. So once I run these, I can share this real quick. So this is my temporary Dagster home where the event logs is stored. And I think if I refresh this, we'll see the event logs that have been populated. So for the pipeline runs. And then for the sensor that I have it under the admin repo, I can enable this. And then what it will do, and I guess this is a little bit different compared to kind of the Airflow and Spark integration, where this is very independent. So I think in this case, it's okay to intentionally fail if the backend is not ready. And as such, it's raising an error here saying the backend is not up. And I'm gonna put the Marquez back up here. And once I do that, the sensor should start sending it to the local DAC Marquez. Okay, there it is. So right now I'm just processing it every 30 records at a time. So it's showing the last processed, and it increments to 60 and 79 records total. And then it keeps ticking, and it will just stay there. So between the sensor evaluations, Dagster allows us to keep track of the state between each run. So we're using and it's called a cursor. So we're using a cursor to keep track of the last process storage ID. So once I run more pipelines here, it will pick up and continue from there. And then what that looks like from Marquez. So by default, these are going to the repositories. So there was a little bit of conversation around this. My understanding of Dagster repository and OpenLineage namespace seem like they're very similar concept, or I could be wrong, but I felt like it was appropriate to use the repository name as the namespace in OpenLineage. So, once I run this, you will see these repo A and repo B namespaces. And if I go to it currently, this is generating the job hello, the job level. So this is the parent job showing, and nothing really interesting to see here. It's just a run. And this run ID is equivalent to the actual Dagster run ID. And then the start time and time file uses the timestamp from the event. So it's perfectly matching there. In the case of an op run, so you can see this is a step ID, and that can consist of actual just an op name, or maybe a graph name included if it's part of a graph. And then this would have the parent job information with the parent run ID, and then just the default producer and schema URL. And yeah, so I think that's pretty much it. Same thing here, a single job and then 2 ops followed with that. And yep, failing job was just throwing an exception, and same thing here. So that's a quick demo. Obviously, being this is a kind of the first integration works. I want to make sure, and the team wants to make sure that it's done the right way. As we're building this block. So looking forward to getting some feedback after our internal review process is done. Any initial questions or thoughts, concerns?
I think this looks great, and it's great to have like the feedback of the Dagster community and like getting to use the right features in Dagster. What's your plan for Lineage? So I'm less familiar with the Dagster. What's the lineage model? Is there some like explicit lineage, or do we need like in the Airflow integration to have like some specific things depending on how people access data?
You mean like what's after getting the initial job cycle, right?
Yeah.
That's where I'm looking to have more discussion. So now that we're kind of dealing with the event logs, so I'm really just processing the basic, pipeline start and step start and step complete or success or failure. But in between there's step outputs, and actually there is something called the asset materialization in Dagster. And we go to the Daggett, and they have some, so you can create an asset within a Dagster. And I just had an example here just to kind of just brainstorm, but potentially we could utilize the asset materialization and kind of interpret it in such a way that OpenLineage can understand. But then one thing I noticed was Dagster keeps asset very generic. So this doesn't have to be a data set. There is no structure defined to this. So I felt like maybe we need to kind of define internal way to interpret this for OpenLineage. And so maybe there's some different integration libraries, say like Dagster, Great Expectation. Actually, Great Expectation is a different one because it outputs the expectation results. So there's few other results. Yeah, so there's few other outputs as part of the step output that Dagster emits, and maybe we could even have a OpenLineage special, specific results that could be, contributed to Dagster and utilize that. I'm not sure, but I do want to have more discussions around that.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think so we could have like more common code between their Airflow Great Expectation integration and the Dagster Great Expectation integration. There'd be a lot of things in common of getting this.
Yeah, and they
nice.
There's actually nothing Airflow specific about the Great Expectations integration. You should just be able to just plug it in, and as long as you add the extra validation action, it should work no matter where you kick it off from.
Yeah, I haven't explored much into because there's also Dagster DBT and we have OpenLineage DBT. So I think these we might need to take more look. But
DBT is the same as Great Expectations. You should be able to like plug it in some maybe specific way, but the core should be the same, I think. I'm not sure what Dagster with Airflow would look like, but that's
like what I'm wondering is because Dagster with Great Expectation, I think, provides an app, predefined app or solid that we can use, and the OpenLineage sensor, if that's the correct route, that's going to generate a job. But then if you have Great Expectation separately enabled, that might create another job. I'm not sure. So
yeah, it would actually, and actually that kind of led me to an earlier question I had about your earlier demo, and that is so you have this kind of parent-child job relationship with the main Dagster workflow and then the ops, right? Do you actually pass the parent run ID in the child job when you send the event to Marquez?
Yeah, currently I do.
You do. Okay. Yeah. So So, I mean, we can extend this hierarchy like pretty much indefinitely. So like if the main Dagster job has a run ID, and then the op has a run ID, and then the Great Expectations run has a run ID, we can still model that parent-child relationship, and it should still work.
I see.
I have a question about how the sensor, like you showed the sensor with back and down, and it kept failing, but then it's at the end it's posted the information. Does it mean that whenever it is down, it keeps the events that it would send and send it in a later date when the backend becomes available?
Yeah, I think they have, I'm not sure if I'm looking at a right place, but they do track a sensor's cursor. So this is persistent, if you have an external storage for this. And so even if like the repository goes down with the sensor and you bring it back up, it should be able to resume, from the last cursor. Otherwise, I'm not, and this is where I wasn't too sure what are some use cases, but I also left the option to override the starting point. So by default, it will always start from the first log. However, if for whatever reason you want to start from some arbitrary starting point, and actually Dagster provides a way to delete a cursor. I'm not sure when that will be. That's probably not needed here, but just in case if that's done, users would be able to kind of restart by providing this. So
it seems like a nice design in Dagster on maintaining all the events and being able to resend them.
And similar to other integrations, it's expecting these environment variables when using user repository deployments and having a separate repository pod. This is where that gets defined. Otherwise, it goes to the Dagster daemon. And then we talked about the Dagster repository being used as a default namespace.
Nice. This is great. Really looking forward to the next step on the OpenLineage side.
Yeah, and thank you, for all the feedback. And so honestly, this was, my first contribution ever. And, I don't have a lot of software engineering experience. So, this was honestly kind of intimidating as I worked through this, and I wasn't sure, like every step I'm questioning it, is this being done right? And, I'm still looking to gather more feedback from you guys. So yeah, pretty excited and thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, it's great. So, that's why I reach out to the Dagster community to get their feedback as well. I think it's great to have both the review from the Dagster side and the OpenLineage side. Yeah. This is awesome. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, nice job, Dalin. And I'll say you're being very Midwestern modern because you're a rock star. So nice job.
So any more question on the Dagster integration? And if people have question later, I'll remind that there's a Slack channel. You'll find, we'll post the slide on the Slack channel afterwards. And there's a link, there's the Dagster integration channel in the OpenLineage Slack, and there's also the ticket which I linked to earlier, 489, where you can chime in as well and have more details. On that, the last topic is the open discussion. So it doesn't sound like today we have anything special to discuss, unless someone wanted to bring something up.
I guess I had a question. It was kind of related to what Dalin presented, and I guess I have two questions. So first question is, how is the OpenLineage community ensuring consistency on like data sets across different integrations, right? So for example, I might have a file out on my file system or in the cloud, and the Dagster integration refers to it as such and such a standard, or the Spark integration refers to it as such a standard. I'm very curious how, like, there's a naming convention? Maybe I should just read the docs. Julian just says, just read the docs. All right.
RTFM.
Yeah, thank you.
No, actually, thank you, Will, to bringing that up. So that brings a great point that I think, well, yeah, there's kind of a missing doc on like, how do you make your own integration? I think right now is just like, the way you've approached it, right? You come talk to us and you ask questions and we answer your questions.
Yes, it's been great. Thank you for that. Right?
which is nice. And so things are here, but there's no like tutorial. How do I write my own integration? And it's kind of like, and there's more now that the community is growing. There's more and more integration coming, so you've been working on the Spark and Databricks aspect and other things.
But yeah, we've got customers wanting to Airflow now, right? And we're pointing them to you guys, and we're like, yes, but then we're like, oh wait, we didn't help implement anything for like Cosmos in Airflow. Shoot, maybe Great Expectations does it, maybe it doesn't. I was just very curious, but this is the answer. This is the answer right here. Okay.
So this is the answer. This is a naming convention. And so basically what this does is, so there's a generic data set kind of template. And then there's a spec for each, a Postgres database, a Redshift database, a Snowflake database, a BigQuery database. How does that fit in that model? A distributed file system. So there's kind of a generic mechanism. And it's like, how does that apply to GCS, S3, HDFS? And right, so there's some missing pieces in the Azure world here. So feel free, to open a PR and complement that. I mean, this all, you notice all those things follow
very similar
template, right? Yep. And there's just some slight specificities, but making it specific to how each service name their things, right? Or whether, for some of those things.
Yep.
And there's a job section as well, which has focused like mainly on Airflow and Spark at the moment. But I think we could add Dagster and other things in this section as well.
Julian, we have done some of this work in how Atlas deals with the qualified name, because that is, essentially what you're building up here is to, have this resource hierarchy, sort of authoritative, and so people don't, put things in the wrong place and have it show up in places where people are not authorized to see it, even from a cataloging perspective, right? So there is some, amount of work that we have done to kind of, define this qualified path idea. I think Egeria also adopts a very similar sort of resource pathing kind of ability there. So we can probably look at this and say, well, we can see if we can build a sort of a translation to how we would construct our qualified name in Atlas from this schema here, or in reverse, if some things are missing in what we already cover, we maybe update the spec.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that would be great for both completing. If there are things that are already defined in Atlas, we could just adopt those instead of having something different for anything that's not defined, and have mappings for everything else. So like. I think part of the spec, having something that says, hey, and if you're we are interfacing with Atlas, either Atlas consuming OpenLineage event, or maybe, data from Atlas being made available as OpenLineage, how we map those things. That would be great.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for that, Julian. I've got another question, but I'll leave it open to anybody else who wants to ask another question.
I just have one quick follow-up question on this topic. Do you see something in the roadmap, or do you think it'd be a valuable proposal to have like client libraries that perform these kind of mappings for more kind of consistency?
I think yes. Right now, yes, it would be. I think that's something I forgot if we had put on the roadmap. Like so far, we made the doc and we kind of enforcing consistency through unit tests more like in various integration, but I think it would be very useful to have libraries. I think mainly we have 2 languages in the repo at the moment, Java and Python. So I guess like one of each.
Okay, thanks. Yeah,
would
I
be
asked
great.
because I know we're doing some of these internally with Java code just for systems that, you know, are difficult to integrate OpenLineage into. Some are more on-prem systems. So yeah, thank you.
I think it would be, yeah.
Julian, maybe it may even be worthwhile to have sort of like a model spec, so that, you know, the consuming systems on the other end, like Atlas or whatever else, can have a consistent way to look at it. So as in, you have like a defined schema for each of these, and that is enforceable. So for example, a certain minimum amount of parameters need to be filled in for that OpenLineage event to be usable by any consumer on the other end.
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah, I think
like a data model essentially for
yeah. So currently we don't have that. I mean, we do have like models, but they're based on mainly on the JSON spec, and the naming convention is just like a convention in the document. It's not encoded in the JSON schema spec, but it would make sense to have, you know, in both so you have a client folder here with the Java and Python library. And right now they just make it easier to generate those OpenLineage events, but we could add other classes in it for the naming convention model, you know, encode this document into types. I think that would be very useful. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, contribution very welcome. And if you want to open a ticket and contribute something, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Great, thank you.
If there's no other question, I have one more question. It was around the Flink integration, and I think that's really, really cool. I know, Julien, you said it was early, right? But also begs the question about the streaming model for Marquez, because my understanding right now, Marquez is more focused on batch jobs, right? Is that ticket for discussion right there? You know, is that going to also incorporate how Marquez / OpenLineage will model streams in general, and that'll apply to the Spark integration too, or would it be bespoke to Flink?
I think it needs to be generic. So I mean, the facet model allows to have both like a generic representation of a stream. Like obviously the Kafka stream is the same, whether it's being consumed by Flink or by Spark streaming.
That's a good point.
And so there's that aspect. So there's like modeling representing like example, a Spark topic, right? But it could be other streams. And then there's modeling. So for example, in Flink, there's this notion of checkpoint and save point, I think. So the main thing we want to make sure we capture is when you stop the stream, like there's like a version, right? You can consider that a version of a data set and, you know, save that. Definitely in OpenLineage, having some ways of capturing checkpointing, and maybe it's configurable that you don't want to generate too much metadata in there. What do I want to mention? So there's some of those aspects here. Oh, yeah. So there's discussion to capture that. Oh yeah. So there's also someone brought up a very common example. You could have a Flink job. It could be something else than Flink. And for example, it could read from a Kafka topic and write to an iceberg dataset. To give an example. And then every now and then it's going to create a new version of the iceberg dataset, like maybe every 15 minutes or something, right? And so you would want to capture the lineage, right? Since OpenLineage, when it's a batch process, it will keep track of there's been a run, and you know, it read this version and wrote to that version. So in that same sense, it'd be ideal to be able to connect the lineage from that dataset version up to, you know, where we stop reading in the stream and have some kind of metadata capture. So it's not completely clear, but this is what this is going to be looking like, and there's going to be some discussion. But yeah, I think we would expect a doc. So there's going to be On the OpenLineage side, how we model those events, right? And capturing maybe the checkpoints or creating a version in the output, committing to the output in some sort. And then there's going to be separately, I think, a Marquez discussion on, what we materialize in Marquez. Marquez has this notion of dataset version versus, what could be different. I think in OpenLineage, you have this notion of start event and end event.
Yep.
And for a streaming job still doesn't run forever, right? It's going to be started at some point and ends at some point, and then there's like a save point of saving the state. And so you want to capture that. But there's an opportunity to send other events, right? OpenLineage allows to have other events that could collect metadata.
Yeah.
And that could be used for checkpoints or other things to capture tracking the progress over time. And so there's this aspect of modeling that in OpenLineage and capturing this metadata. And then in Marquez, there's some decision on how much we want to materialize, right? In terms of what's a dataset version or not. Because there's like scalability concern if you materialize every checkpoint as a version, which we may not in Marquez. So there's a bit of discussion of what's the best trade-off on that side.
Yeah, just thinking again, a little bit selfishly around the Microsoft side, right? We have an Event Hub tool, which is similar to a Kafka, and Spark streaming, right? I know Maciej's got an old issue out there to work on some of the Spark streaming events, and I'm super excited for that. But I think that like Spark streaming cannot be handled until this conversation is complete, right? Until those decisions are made, right? Is that fair?
I think yes. I think there's it's part of it. I think there's been some work with Spark and Kafka, but I think that's for the case where people consume a stream in batch mode, right?
Aha, yes, that makes
because
sense.
there's that as well. Like every hour I'm going to consume whatever's new and create a file from it.
Yeah.
And so that's been done. Yes, I think like both efforts on the Spark streaming and the Flink need the same thing, is how we model those things. And there's a generic aspect, like having those things like fairly generic across both. And there also the opportunity to add extra facets that are Flink specific or Spark specific to capture metadata that's specific to each of those.
Yep.
So I think
so
on
Julien,
the
maybe one way to kind of maybe think about this is there is your for systems like Kafka, right? You might have like a schema registry or something. So that part, the metadata part around what's happening there in terms of inputs and outputs, etc. Those transformations, etc. That is probably like a more, I would say, less variant over time, as opposed to the actual content in terms of the number of records or number of events that are pushed into these or consumed on the other end. So we could kind of separate those two and say we model, at least where possible, if it's like structured, we at least get the schema from whatever might be the authoritative source for that. In the case of Kafka, it might be a schema registry, for example. And then we address the other piece, which is around, hey, what time point or is it a batch, or is it continuously? You don't care because you're only looking at the rate of ingest or something like that. So you only need like what has been. Have you seen anything anomalous in terms of that stream's behavior? So.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so that's what we're thinking. I think in one of the use cases we're looking at, there's using Avro and the schema registry around this on top of Kafka. And so in those cases, we'd capture a schema facet, similar to what is done for databases. And yes, I agree. This is more like constant. It changes less often than the data itself, right? So you don't want to like save too many changes in the Marquez model. So those things are kind of a bit decoupled. So I mean, there's some discussion that can happen there.
Thanks for that insight, Julien. That was really helpful.
You're welcome. So on that, we are almost at the end of this meeting, and that was a very fruitful discussion. So I'm glad, when I put those items on the agenda, I was like, okay, I'm just putting things that are barely started, but actually it was a great conversation starter. So this was good. Thank you, everyone. And and so you're welcome if you have other interesting things of things you've done in the past, even if they're not new things around OpenLineage and you'd want to share about, you should feel welcome to propose agenda items to the on the Slack channel. I think we always ping people before the meeting on the general to say, hey, the meeting is coming. If you want to add agenda items, please feel free. And see you in a month.
Hey, Julien, just a quick thing for you. I'll reach out to you offline. I was wondering, who you're working with on the Flink community side, simply because they have at least as far as I can remember, Cloudera had a Atlas connector for Flink at some point. So I was just curious if you can share who you're working with in that community. That'd be very useful for us from the Purview side.
Yeah, I'll check with them if I can do that, and I'll get back to you.
Sure, no worries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julien. Thanks all.
Thanks. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks all.